Okay, so today we're diving into something I bet most people don't think twice about, leftover tree stumps.
Yeah, they're kind of just there, right?
Exactly. But we're
Yeah.
not just talking about stumps anywhere. We're focusing on Richards Bay specifically because, well, you sent over some fascinating
Oh,
stuff.
yeah?
Yeah, outlines and some script bits from this show called Tree Fellers Near Me. There's an episode, Stump Nightmares in Richards Bay.
Okay, catchy title.
Right. And it gets pretty dramatic about these stumps. Like, they're not just eyesores, they're legit threats to your property.
It's interesting. I mean, I guess I never thought of them as much more than an inconvenience.
Right. So, our mission here is to dig into this, figure out why, in Richards Bay especially, dealing with stumps isn't just about a nice yard.
It sounds like it could be a real necessity for these folks.
Exactly.
It really is remarkable, how something that seems so, well, dead can actually set off a whole chain reaction of problems.
Yeah, and the material starts with this story. A family in Richards Bay, their patio starts splitting apart, cracking because of roots from an old stump.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty vivid image. I can see why that would get your attention.
Right. Suddenly it's not just about looks anymore.
No, that's real structural damage, potentially a huge expense.
Exactly. And then the source lays out these three silent stump dangers. Termite infestation is the first one. Apparently stumps are like beacons for termites.
Makes sense. They love that decaying wood.
Yeah, but it's not just the stump they munch on. It's like a direct path to your house.
Oh, so the stump becomes a bridge for the infestation.
Exactly. And what's particularly concerning for Richards Bay is the prevalence of a specific type of termite there. Nasutotermes natalensis, I think it is.
Right, right. They're subterranean, known for really rapid colony growth.
Yeah.
And they can cause extensive damage, especially to structural timber.
So it's not just, oh, some termites might show up. It's potentially a really aggressive infestation.
Yeah, and studies in the area show these infestations popping up from decaying wood in just a few months,
Wow. So the clock is ticking as soon as you leave that stump there.
basically.
Okay, so danger number two is something I honestly hadn't considered. Root growth. I mean, the tree is gone, so I figure the roots are done, right?
You'd think so, but it's not that simple. They can keep growing even after the tree is felled.
Really?
Yeah, they still have a ton of stored energy, and they're programmed to seek out water and nutrients.
So they're just blindly pushing through the soil.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
And if they hit something solid like a foundation or your patio,
Uh-oh.
the pressure they can exert is incredible. Cracks, structural weaknesses, it can be a real nightmare.
It's like the silent force just working away underground.
Exactly, and it often goes unnoticed until the damage is already significant.
Okay, so termite invasion, relentless root growth. What's the third danger?
Fungal diseases. Decaying stumps become breeding grounds for all sorts of fungi, and some of those can spread to healthy trees.
Oh, so it's not just a localized problem. It can infect your whole garden.
Exactly. And Richards Bay's climate, all that warmth and humidity, it creates the perfect conditions for these fungi to thrive.
So it's like the problem multiplies.
Exactly. The faster decomposition attracts more termites. The dampness encourages fungal growth and root expansion. It's a vicious cycle.
Richards Bay sounds like a tough place to ignore a tree stump.
It definitely presents some unique challenges. The sandy soil there, for example, can actually lead to sinkholes.
Really, I wouldn't have connected those two things.
Yeah, so the stump decomposes quickly in that sandy soil, faster than in denser soils, and it leaves these voids underground.
I see. So the ground above just collapses into the empty space.
Exactly. And since sandy soil isn't as cohesive, it settles unevenly, which leads to sinkholes. It can be a real hazard.
Wow, so the stump isn't just a problem when it's there, it's a problem when it's gone too.
Right. Another thing to consider is the salty air in Richards Bay. It's incredibly corrosive to tools, especially if you're thinking about DIY removal.
Yeah, that salty air will eat through metal pretty quickly.
Exactly. Any tools you use will rust and degrade much faster than they would inland, meaning more frequent replacements, more costs.
So DIY might not be as cost effective as it seems at first glance.
Right. And then there's the high water table in Richards Bay, which just adds to the problem.
How so?
Well, it keeps the soil constantly saturated, which we know accelerates the decay process, makes it even more inviting for pests and fungi.
So it's like every element of the environment is conspiring against you.
In a way, yes. Complete removal becomes absolutely essential to break that cycle of problems.
So let's talk about the pros. The source mentioned laser assessment, which turns out is ground penetrating radar. Sounds pretty high tech.
It is. It's like an X-ray for the ground. They send these electromagnetic pulses into the earth and analyze the signals that bounce back.
So they can actually see what's going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. They can map the entire root system, see how deep it goes, how far it spreads.
That's incredibly helpful for planning a removal strategy.
Absolutely. No going in blind, no risk of missing large roots that could cause problems later.
Smart. And then there's surgical grinding, which sounds pretty intense.
It is. They use these specialized grinders with carbide-tipped teeth, incredibly tough and durable. They grind the stump and roots into wood chips.
So it's a really thorough removal process.
Yes, the idea is to remove as much of that problematic wood material as possible, deep enough to prevent regrowth.
And some companies even go a step further with soil rehabilitation.
Right, they'll add a nutrient mix to help the soil recover and make sure it's healthy for future planting.
That's a level of care you probably wouldn't get with DIY.
Absolutely. And speaking of DIY, the source paints a pretty grim picture of trying to tackle this yourself.
Yeah, I was reading about that chemical removal gone wrong, an actual explosion during a bray.
Yikes, that's a backyard barbecue you wouldn't forget.
Right. It just highlights the dangers of using these chemicals if you don't know what you're doing.
Absolutely. And even renting equipment can backfire. Remember that story about the guy who caused 15,000 rands worth of damage to underground pipes with a rented grinder?
Ouch. That's a reminder that there are hidden costs and risks with DIY.
Definitely. You need to know what's going on beneath the surface before you start digging and grinding.
And then the source throws out this statistic. 92% of DIY stump removals in Richards Bay result in injury, property damage, or incomplete removal.
Wow, that's a really high failure rate.
It is, and it usually ends up costing more than just hiring a professional in the first place.
Makes you think twice about trying to tackle it yourself,
Hmm.
especially with the added challenges in Richards Bay.
They also had a couple of case studies, or at least strongly implied ones, to illustrate the point.
Oh, yeah?
They revisit that story about the family in Richards Bay, the one with the patio being destroyed by roots.
Right, just to hammer home that these are real problems happening to real people.
Exactly. And then there's the Longa Rocks case, a luxury home with a neglected palm stump.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that one. It didn't end well.
It did not. Roots growing into the cool foundation, termites in the roof beams, 200,000 rand knocked off the property value.
Oof. That's a hefty price to pay for ignoring a stump.
And apparently they could have avoided another 400,000 rand in damages if they'd called in the pros sooner.
So getting it done right can actually save you money in the long run.
Exactly. So the takeaway here is that ignoring stumps, especially in Richards Bay, can be a really costly gamble.
Definitely. Proactive action is key here.
And the source offers some really practical advice for homeowners. They suggest documenting any stumps on your property. Just take some pictures.
Great starting point. It gives you a visual record and helps when you're talking to professionals.
Right. Then get a professional risk assessment. The source even mentioned a free assessment offered via WhatsApp.
Nice. No upfront costs, just some expert advice tailored to your situation.
And finally, consider booking a professional removal, especially if there are any seasonal offers. Like they mentioned, a spring special with a deadline in October.
Always good to take advantage of those if you can.
So at the end of this deep dive, it seems clear. Those seemingly innocent tree stumps can be ticking time bombs, especially in Richards Bay.
It's a good reminder that even small landscaping issues can have big consequences.
And that leads to our final thought for you. If a stump can cause so much trouble, what other seemingly minor issues in your yard might be silently undermining your property? It's definitely worth taking a closer look. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of stumps and the hidden dangers they might hold.
Absolutely. It's been an eye-opening discussion.
Until next time.
See you then.